Welcome to podcast number 3 of the Drop Everything podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Holzman, one half of the Raspini brothers, and today I'll be talking with one of my favorite jugglers, a good friend, and the inventor of the bounce piano, Dan Menendez. We'll talk about his early career, the influence his father had on his career, and of course, in part number 2, the invention and creation of the bounce piano. Before we get to the podcasts, let's thank a couple sponsors. First, Todd Smith. Todd Smith, the juggler's friend. One of the big reasons I'll be upset about missing this year's IJA convention is I will not be able to hang out at Club Todd. Club Todd has always been a big part of the conventions for me, hanging out and shooting the breeze with Todd Smith. Todd Smith has a great new club out. It's called The Assassin. It's the club with deadly accuracy. Another sponsor of the podcast who deserves a big shout out is Renegade Juggling. Renegade Juggling built me a special new prop for my routine and really short notice. Really appreciate Tom Renegade and the crew at Renegade for being there for all my juggling needs. Now, sit back, drop everything, get ready for our podcast with Daniel Menendez. Welcome to the podcast, Dan Menendez. This is podcast number 3 of Drop Everything. I'm talking to the original piano juggler, Dan Menendez. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Now, I'm talking to you a couple days before Father's Day. And so before we get into your story, I've always been fascinated by the story of your father. So if you don't mind, give us some background on what he did for a living and how that influenced you.
Well, he started out as a professional boxer, and he was in East St. Louis, which is was the boxing hub, kind of a rough place. And he got a manager when he turned pro after the Army, after World War II, and the manager was a magician. And he talked the magician into showing him card tricks and stuff while they were on the trains going to matches and stuff like that. And he got to learn some inside, like, professional magic, like, you know, the card in the orange and tricks like that are, in those days, you just couldn't look on the internet. You know, there was real secrets. And so he had a really nice, like, an hour of magic that he could do at parties. He never did it professionally, but he could kill. I saw him do it so many times where he would just kill at a party with all his friends or whatever the event was. And he could juggle a little bit. I guess the guy showed him to juggle a little bit, but he never showed me any of it. He never tried to teach me any of it. But because I saw him do the juggling, when I turned like around 13 or so, I went and got some golf balls and just taught myself to juggle. And I'd seen him do it enough that I had the idea, you know, and I just taught myself. And then there was nothing more to learn, and really just kind of sat there for a long time, able to do 3 balls, and that's it. And then
your dad went on, wasn't he coach for Muhammad Ali or in the Olympic team?
Yeah, well, so then he was a professional boxer, and he was very successful, but then he broke his hand, and at that point he had come out to California, and he decided to go back to college, or actually to go to college, because he had never, and then he went to San Jose State, and while he was there, he helped the boxing team. They had college boxing, and so the boxing coach wanted him because he was such a good boxer to help train the boxers. And then the boxing coach died tragically in this tractor accident, and my dad had been taking classes in how to be education and so on. And the school just said, hey, you can be the boxing coach. So he became the boxing coach at San Jose State. And then they banned boxing when a boxer got killed. So boxing was banned. This is the long story.
No, it's all right. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, they banned boxing from college because a guy got killed. And so he had been training. He had done such a big success at boxing at San Jose State that they made him the Olympic boxing coach for 1960 in Rome. And so he had all the boxers training them, and one of them was this guy Cassius Clay, who was 18 years old, who was on the team, and he trained him for quite a while, and he ended up winning the gold medal in Rome, became Muhammad Ali, of course.
Mm-hmm. And
then he would call my dad during his career just for advice and, you know, and stuff like that. And so I would answer the phone every once in a while. And
right. Hey, champ.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, he's right here. I never really got to talk to him, but I was actually on the phone with him. And
Now, your dad
So
was also involved with soccer. I know that's one of your lifetime loves.
yeah,
And transitioned into soccer or
right. So
football?
because they banned boxing, he had been using soccer to train his boxers because they really didn't have much soccer going on. But then he started a soccer team when the boxing got banned, and he was a professor at San Jose State, and so then soccer kind of took off, and then he did so well at the soccer that they made him the Olympic soccer coach
Hmm.
for the U.S. And so he's the only person that's ever coached two separate team sports in the Olympics for the U.S. That's kind of his big claim, other than also coaching Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, he wanted him to be his manager, and my dad just decided not to do it because he had a family and he had a good job and so on. But he could actually have been his manager when he started as a pro.
Do you remember any of his coaching philosophies? Did anything he used for his teams inspire you as a juggler?
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing about him and it was honesty. It was really his whole approach was he was not going to try to pull, try to con his own athletes. He was really, really honest with them. So when they did something good, he made sure that they knew that he thought it was something good and in front of the other teammates and so on. And so they knew that it was real. They knew he was coming from a real place because everybody knew, he says the way like it is. And he was very calm also. He was very, he wasn't excitable during the big matches or whatever. He was really kind of quiet. And once the game was on, he was no longer instructing. Instruction was during practice.
Right.
Once the game was on, it's up to the athletes to do it, which is the same, in anything. Once if you haven't done the practicing, then it's going to be a mess.
And did that
And
translate into his fathering style as well? Was he always honest with you? And
I think so. Yeah, he was like a rock. He was really. It wasn't militaristic in the sense that you hear parents being,
right.
because he had the Spanish background, which was very warm. But there was a lot of that kind of honesty and straightforward. This is how it is, and so you're very realistic about where you were and how good your skills are. And I think that helped me with juggling. I was always kind of over practicing for my show, and he would give me some tips about performing, that I think he related with boxing because boxing was really a one person thing. It was just you against the other guy, and the crowd was there. So it was kind of like a lot like being a juggler. So I think he had some insight
And were
to
you
being.
involved with athletics before you got into juggling? Were you? Because I always remember you at the early conventions. You always had your shirt off, the chest hair ablaze, flowing in the wind, and you're always very well conditioned.
Yeah, well, he raised me to be a soccer player. And he taught me boxing, but he didn't want me to do any boxing. He took me to a couple of matches. I saw George Foreman. I was in the front row. Got blood all over me.
Mm.
And that kind of said, "Oh yeah, I don't want to do this."
Right,
But
right, right.
I was raised to be a soccer player, and then I played for him at San Jose State. I played Division I soccer, and we had a great team when I was a senior. We were nationally ranked, and um, we could have won the whole thing, which is a big deal. I mean, it's not an easy thing to
Right.
do. We had the team to do it, and we lost 1-0 to the team that eventually won the whole thing, Indiana. So yeah, I mean, I was in real heavy duty competitive soccer, and that helps with you learning how to practice things and break things down. Which is I've always done with juggling is take a trick and how can I break this down into smaller tricks or skills that I can do that will lead me to this trick that I'm trying to do. And you can break any trick down into 100 different skills. And it also makes it less boring for your practice. If you're just constantly failing at some trick, if you can break it down into something you can do or just barely do, and you start feeling like, hey, I'm having some success. And so that's an approach I've always used, and I think that comes from my dad's style. And it had a lot to do with his style had a lot to do with boxing and psychology of sport, and getting an edge and stuff like that. I think he was kind of responsible for Ali's trash talk because he believed that you could use talking to your opponent to your advantage.
Well,
And
Ali certainly had that down. You
yeah,
can't really do that in juggling very much to the audience. Like, you suckers! Wait till you see I'm the best.
no,
I'm the
because
greatest.
opponent. You're trying to, you want them to love you. You don't want them to be here against you.
It's like I
You
was
want them,
juggling with this guy yesterday, just a pure hobby guy, and we start to juggle. First thing he does, he grabs the clubs. First thing he does is try like 4 clubs. He's not even close.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to say like, well, if you really want to excel or get better, I wouldn't start this way. I'd maybe warm up a little bit because he's a hobbyist, I thought, and he wasn't looking to me for instruction. But you see, like you were saying, you got to break it down. You got to start with your scales and then your 2 balls in one hand and
But
build it up.
I also believe that, and I tell this to people, try the hardest thing. Don't go, well, I should never try that because I can't do 7 balls, so I should never try it. I should learn 6 balls first. I say try everything, and then you know where you are. If you
Right.
don't try everything, you don't know where you are, and you may be farther than you think. Try 9 balls, and maybe 7 balls will be easier. Play around with it. Just play around with everything, but be realistic. It's that honesty thing that has always come back to me. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, because my computer just
Oh
okay.
no, you sound good. I can hear you, see you. It's all going good.
My computer just went dark.
Well, let's talk a little bit then about you started with this athletic background. You had this influence from your dad, who had a coaching style, a philosophy. So you learn to juggle, and you think like, okay, that's it. I can juggle. That's it, right? What else do I need to do about juggling? How did it go from that into actually a hobby, a profession, and where'd you get
Right.
that start?
Well, right about when I was in college, I was taking a class, and one of the assignments in the class, it was a PE class, because I was thinking about being a PE teacher, and like my dad in high school PE teacher. So I was taking this class, and they said everybody in the class has to learn to juggle, and for the final, you have to get up and juggle in front of the class. If you can't juggle, you fail the class.
Hmm.
And this is not a class that you could fail if you
Right, right.
wanted to. So, I could already juggle, and I'm like, nah, piece of cake. So the final came, and this other guy could juggle pretty good, and everybody was applauding. And then I got up and I juggled, and then I kept juggling, and I went over and I sat down in my chair and kept juggling, and everybody goes, "Ah, that's insane!" They thought it was great. So I thought, so I went to the library and I got the Carlo book.
Yeah, 1974, right?
Just
Around there?
well, this was 78
Okay.
when I was in college and I was graduating. So it was pretty old. I was 24 or something when I really got into
Hmm.
it. But I started using the Carlo book and juggling every day just for fun. I did have no idea about performing or anything. I was just doing it for fun. But I remembered that the people that cheered when I was in class, and I felt completely comfortable juggling in front of those people. And I was not a guy that would get up in front of people. It's something I just didn't think I could do very well. I could do it, maybe informally, but doing a show, I never thought about ever doing that. But then that felt pretty comfortable. So I think that kind of sunk in. And so I started working on my juggling. And then I was showing my friends in the neighborhood and they were trying it and so on. And then I was looking for a juggler for like a year. Can I see a juggler perform? And I saw the Karamazovs at the Cannery doing a street show. But I was with a big group and I'm like, hey, stop. We got to see this. We need to watch this. And they were all, no, no, come on, we're going to dinner. So I saw like 10 seconds of the Karamazovs, and that made me really like, ooh, juggling clubs. I got to get those. And I bought some juggle bug clubs at that point, I believe, at a magic shop. And then I saw Fred Anderson, the Mismos, at the at the Cannery, I think in San Francisco, and I watched them do a whole show. And then I watched Fred count his money. I don't think he saw me.
Right, right.
He didn't realize I was doing it. He's just a guy. And he had like $40 in his hat, and I'm like, dude, I can juggle that good.
Right. Now, for
So
people who
I
don't
mean,
know,
that's
the Cannery
Fred
was a street
show.
performing spot out. So you grew up in the Bay Area, in San Jose. Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, and so I started thinking about doing a street show, and I went to a street fair and did a street show and got like $15 and thought, this is pretty cool.
So your only inspiration at that point is you'd seen a little bit of the Karamazovs, you'd seen like maybe 1 or 2 street shows, then you said, I could do this, and you just went out and did it yourself.
I just went to a street fair and did a show and made $13, and I had no money. There was a point where I had 35 cents in my pocket that I was walking around with for a while, and like, if I spend this, I won't have any money.
Right.
I mean, I was really broke, but I was living at my parents, and they were not giving me any allowance or anything, but um, I was living at my parents' place, kind of mooching off of them. And then I started trying the street shows, and then I went to Fargo, and that's where I met you for the first time,
Yeah,
actually.
exactly. Was that 1980?
1980, right?
That was,
You were there.
and when you mentioned the Carlo book, I have a real soft spot for the Carlo book because that's also how I learned. Knew
Yeah,
nothing,
yeah.
got the book, went in the backyard. So we
Mhm.
share kind of a similar. I saw very few jugglers until I
Those
saw Chris
days,
Cremo on TV.
yeah, I mean, in those days, I think, you know what, I think I saw Chris Cremo, but it was just sort of in the back of my mind,
He was on
you
the
know.
Merv Griffin show. I forget
Right.
what year it was. I had
Yeah.
been juggling maybe for a couple years, and I was so excited. I remember circling it in the TV guide because I had gotten the TV guide, always looking for jugglers, and it said Chris Cremo Juggler. I circled it, waited all week. I think it was like on a Thursday, and when he came on, I was blown away, but also disheartened.
Because he's good.
I didn't think I could do that. I thought
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
with the look, the precision, the character, and my juggling, as you probably knew, it was kind of laid back. It wasn't didn't have a lot of punch or charisma. So when I saw him, I thought, oh, I don't know, I don't know. But then Fargo, man, Fargo, I saw a guy kick up a club. I saw a guy do a curl with a ball. That was quite a festival way back in the
Yeah,
day.
it was Barry Felker, Peter
Yeah.
Davidson, Jackman.
Remember
Those,
their name, that Magnificent Material Movers before Air Jazz.
right.
Yeah. Peter Davidson, another real influence in those early days. Barrett Felker. Remember
I
who
just,
won the competitions that year?
uh, who won?
He went on to work for
Michael
Pixar.
Cass.
Michael
Michael Cass.
Cass. I
Yeah.
remember seeing Michael Cass in the bus, and he looked kind of like, if you know Michael Cass, especially in that time, he looked more like a guy, what would you say, maybe a computer guy or a chess
Yeah.
champion or something of that nature. And I'm like, hey, do you go to school here? He goes, oh, I'm a juggler. I go, oh, okay, you're a juggler. Then he went on to win the whole thing with a flawless routine of kick-ups. So how'd you get out to Fargo? Because I know I
It was
rode
a
in the
great
van.
story. So then, here's what happened is I was with a buddy of mine, and I was starting to learn five balls. I was working on five balls from the Carlo book, and reading the Carlo book how to do it. And then there was an ad in the paper. It said juggling show at this local magic shop. So I went over there, and there's this guy Jerry the Juggler. Well, it turns out he was not a juggler; he was a magician, but he called himself Jerry the Juggler, and he would just juggle three balls for like 10 seconds. But before he started his show, he had all his props laid out on this table, and he'd left, and it was out in front of the magic store at this shopping center, and there was these chairs set up, and there was two people in the chairs, and I went up, and I was with my buddy, and my buddy was like, "Go juggle those balls in front of these
Right,
people," and I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna do that."
right.
So I go up and I try to do five balls, and I drop them, and the guy in the audience goes, "Hey, how long have you been trying that?" And it was Barry Bacalor.
Of course, another very important name to us Bay Area guys.
Yeah. And so he said, I said, yeah, I've just been learning. He goes, I've been trying to do it too. So afterwards, he said, hey, we should have a juggling club. And we started the San Jose Juggling Club that day at that magic shop, and it became quite big. It ended up being a really successful club for a while. I don't know what's going on now there, but Barry ended up hosting the IJA convention in San Jose in '86 or something like that. And
And Barry had one of the first collections of juggling videos.
yeah, that was big for me.
That
That
was
was
big for
really,
me too. I'd go over to his house and for
yeah.
hours, and he would watch with me for hours and hours and analyze the jugglers and yeah,
He had
he's
juggling night, and everybody would go
yep.
over there and watch his videos, and that was huge for me because that really made me see that there was a lot of different things and variety, different ways of going, different things to juggle, and ways to be a performer. You didn't have to be a certain way, you didn't have to be like I thought. Oh, all the good jugglers are Michael Davis, was what I was thinking for a while, and then like Michael Davis, that's how you do a juggling show. But seeing all the stuff with Barry had, start to realize, no, there's endless ways of being a performer. You can mix anything with anything. You can you don't have to be a juggler, or you can be a juggler. You can be a comedy juggler. You can be a straight juggler. Whatever. There's just endless things. It was great. That was so great.
Well, if you want to be a comedy juggler, there's a fewer good examples of how to be a good comedy juggler than Michael Davis.
Yeah, yeah. And that's who I saw in the comedy clubs. I was going to the comedy clubs the whole time once was old enough, and becoming a juggler, and I was just going because I liked comedy. But then I started to see, I saw A. Whitney Brown and Michael Davis do their acts in San Jose comedy clubs, and that for a while that was like, okay, that's how you do it, right there.
Well, that's a good. I mean, that's like you say. There's many different ways, but certainly
Yeah.
that template of the comedy juggler. I always think of Michael Davis as sort of the godfather of that style, and very
Mhm.
few people have bettered that, if anybody.
Yeah,
That
A. Whitney Brown was quite good.
I
He
never
was
saw him
very
that much. He
he
went
was
on to be
very
on Saturday Night Live, right? A. Whitney Brown.
yeah, and he became a writer for Saturday Night Live, and then he had a little segment he would do called The Big Picture, and he did stand up. He stopped doing his juggling act. He actually had a dog for a while. He did street performing in San Francisco, and
So were
um,
you always a talking juggler? So right when you started, because you started with street shows and you had an interest in comedy. So was that always kind of your initial style, like the talking
yeah,
comic juggler?
from seeing the Fred Anderson and the Mismos, his partner, and seeing them, I actually saw Robert Nelson, and I came up to him and said, "Hey, are you going to do a show?" And he said, "It's too nice a day to do a show," and walked away. So I didn't get to see his
Okay.
act for
Right, right.
years after that. He was like, he had a real attitude.
Too
But I
nice
mean,
today.
I
The
like
crowd's too
Rob.
big. I don't know. I'm in too good of a mood. I'm not my usual
Yeah,
aggressive, feisty self. I just feel too good.
he doesn't want people to hate him.
Right, right. Yeah, I don't want any hate today. It's too nice today. Okay, so then you started doing some street shows, and was there a certain point where it just clicked like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And then you became a professional. Is that how it kind of transpired?
Well, it was the whole thing of I didn't have a job, and I tried to get a couple jobs, and I had a job at UPS unloading boxes from trucks, and I figured out real quick that wasn't what I wanted to
You
do.
gave that up for juggling? Whoa, what a sucker move that was.
And then I started street performing, and I was still iffy on the street performing because I didn't. I thought, well, $13 for a show, this isn't going to be something I can make a living at. And then I went to the Spring Fair in Santa Cruz, which is a big street fair, and I was sharing this spot with these comedians in Santa Cruz. What are they called? They're these improv comedian comedy group. They were really good. They were really funny, and I was making a lot of money. I had like piles of money, and that was when it was like, okay, this is it for me. I'm all in.
So this was
I'm
after Fargo. What year are we talking about here? Where you finally start making those big hats?
like 81.
Mm.
Yeah, right away, really. I mean, pretty quick. I juggled like a maniac. I mean, I, I, I can't imagine anybody juggling harder than I did, but I'm sure they do. But
How many hours a day are we talking? Six,
I,
seven, eight?
yeah, and I tried to, I'm going to do 8 hour juggling. So I tried to do that for a while, but it was like, you would just get worse if
Yeah,
you did.
there's a diminishing returns at a certain point.
And I realized that what really worked, and this went back to my sports background, is practicing and breaking up the segments as much as you can. I mean, even a half an hour here, and then
Right.
resting for a long time, letting it sink in, do another half an hour later on. Try to do it every day for sure. Do it to music. I really think juggling to music really helps a lot. And then I was not one of the mistakes that I made, a really big mistake, is I did not try to get into comedy writing and learning about. It was too hard to find sources for that, and I wished I would have really got into comedy writing and really learned all that. Because later on, I was doing comedy clubs, and I really had the opportunity to learn more about writing comedy, and I didn't take advantage of that. I was doing my juggling act, my street act in comedy clubs, and I did that for many years in many comedy clubs, and was living with these comedians in the comedy condos and stuff, and should have been really trying to be a student of stand up and how to write jokes and stuff, and I didn't do it. That was a huge mistake on my part.
Well, many people they come into juggling first and they don't realize if you're going to build yourself as a comedy juggler, that comedy comes first. I mean, you're a comedy
It's
juggler. People like juggling as much as they like, I don't know, not very many things. It's just something like I was talking the other day to somebody about how you can juggle at a walk around or even practice in the park, and people just walk by. They don't even want to look sometimes because like you could be doing something amazing and they just don't even want to they think maybe you're going to rope them in and to try to get money or sell them on
Right.
some. Or
You're just strange. You're
it's
just strange.
strange,
Yeah. Yeah.
but everybody loves comedy.
Well, I really believe the value of an act, if you're going to sell an act, especially if you're going to try to do comedy, is the value of the act is 80% comedy, 20% juggling. That means the juggling is that's very little skill. There's not a lot of skill necessary if you really are good with the comedy.
I don't think
And
many guys go like, I'm really interested in comedy, 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 comedy. Oh, I'm going to learn to juggle. It's usually
yeah,
like, I'm so into juggling. I love juggling. And
yeah,
then, oh, I got to get me some comedy. But they
that
don't
was
come from
me.
that direction.
That was me, and that's most people. That's
Yeah.
most people that you see. There are exceptions, and I think Edward Jackman was really funny, and
Yeah, he's a name that people don't know too much. I think there's one YouTube video of him. Another really big influence back in the early days was Edward Jackman, big IGA presence, who had one of the first complete packages of comedy and juggling, character, big
technical
tricks,
juggling.
yeah, technical, but disappeared from the scene. And now he really won't even interact with other jugglers. Put the whole thing behind him, which is a shame.
Yeah, there's been a few jugglers that done that.
Well, yeah, we've had some guys who had a lot of potential. Ken Falk comes to mind, being back from San Jose, one of the young 14-year-old wonder kids who then discovered girls and said, girls versus juggling. I'm going for the girls. So, all right, so you're doing your early street career. You're doing some stuff in comedy clubs. So I remember when we first met that you had like one of the kind of careers. You did a lot of like festivals, Zucchini Festival, but also you were like kind of a guerrilla guy. You'd go out there and just show up at a festival, do the
Yeah,
shows, maybe
I
some of the
would
early
go
cruise ship
anywhere,
days.
anywhere. I was heavy duty. Anywhere where I could street perform. It didn't matter if you're not supposed to do that. I would do it and get thrown out. And I was pretty fearless. My dad used to tell me he used to ride the rails and stuff like this. And
Right.
so the type of stuff I was doing, I thought was pretty tame compared to what I'd always heard. So, yeah, I did a lot of street performing, and it was in my blood, really. Street performing was in my blood. There's nothing like a great street show. There's nothing like it. You just the feeling that you get being right in the middle of it with all those people, and it's their show, and they created it, and it's a great feeling. And then you get the money afterwards, and you feel like, I earned this money. They gave it to me because they liked it, not because they had to pay a ticket price or the client paid so much. So it's really cool. It's just not good money, very much money, but
It
it's
can
really,
be. I think of it like surfing. Like sometimes like right now I'm in a position in my career where I still street perform, but I consider it more of like a hobby. And I think
mhm.
like it's like surfing where you go out and you go, the waves are kind of flat today. It's pretty choppy out there. There's some sharks. It's not a great day. I'm still happy I'm out here surfing, but it's not a great day. But then some days when the waves are perfect,
It's awesome.
it's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, because you're like riding that wave. You're riding the feelings of the crowd into this conclusion where they're going to give you money. And when you can get that connection and really feel like that spontaneity of creating a show almost out of nothing, it's a rush for sure.
It is. There's nothing like it. There really is nothing like it in performing. I feel sorry for anybody who really has not gotten that rush
Well, it's
of
not for everybody, right? You
uh,
gotta have your big boy pants on sometimes when you get out there.
scream and
So someone could, I love always when you do stories. Do you have any stories from one of these early gigs? Sometimes you've had some hellish early gigs, and you've even nowadays some of these your foreign travel. But give us like one story from the early days, and then let's get into something where a lot of people, of course, know you from is the bounce piano. So let's get one hellish story or one great story of your street performing days. And then let's talk about the creation of that great invention, the bounce piano.
well, I mean, after the street performing, and I was doing shows with the piano. There's some hellish gigs that I did. Is that what you mean, or you just mean street
Well,
performers?
we all have these stories where
Yeah,
where there's some crazy occurrence because it's always different. Every show is different, and I've always, whenever we talk on the phone, there's always we both have examples
yeah,
of
yeah.
situations that just aren't really conducive to great juggling shows.
Well, one that went well was I was doing a show at a festival, like on the big grass area, and in the middle of the show, this dirt is flying up out of the ground and hitting my leg, and then a gopher is like peeking out,
Right.
and the people are all they just start howling, laughing, And so the whole show, it was me against the Gopher. So I was trying to whack him with a club, and he wouldn't go away. He kept, and it was like he was being a critic of my show. Like, I would do a trick, and he'd start kicking dirt on me. And so that was a show that went really well. That was something that was not a hell gig. A hell gig for me was like I was with a group, and we were performing at a street sale in Watsonville, and they had like tables out with clothing on sale, and there was about 5 or 6 Hispanic ladies going through the clothing, and we're out there. I'm up there trying to do a show, and they're literally turning around and scowling at me like, quit making that noise. And I'm thinking, this is like the bottom. This is the bottom of show business. There is no farther down you can go.
Right.
This gig right here, and I got no money, and I had to do 3 shows like that. But you just do it. Now there's times when you have like 5 people watching, and it's a great show.
It can be, yeah. I remember being in the Pier 39 during, I think it was the World Cup, and they put a sports bar right by the stage. And there were definitely times where you were doing your scheduled show, and Mr. Juggler, do you really have to do that now? We're watching the World Cup. Like, no, this is my time, and yeah, it's not always you're not always the first priority.
I worked at a ski resort doing my act. This is before the piano. It was pretty cool because I would ski down to the ski lines, and there was huge lines because it was during Christmas break, and I would do my juggling act on my skis, and I would get the people to click their poles together for applause. Right. And it was a great gig. And then I would do a show after skiing in the lounge.
That was a paid gig? I mean, you'd been hired by
Kirkwood Ski Resort. Right. It was really nice. It was I did it several years for Christmas break. So it's a couple of weeks, 3 weeks or something. And then I would do a show. So then I go to do my show in the lounge area, the after ski area. And they've got a television on, and I think it was Monday Night Football or something was on. It was a big football game was on, and they're all watching that. And then the guy goes in there, and I wasn't watching that; they were watching the football game. And he goes, "Oh, we're gonna have a show," and he turns his TV off.
Right. It doesn't go over well.
They're going, "Go on up." I'm like, "No."
Yeah, we had a corporate one time where we're right before when the guy introduces us. Right, it's a corporate event. Not a huge crowd to start with. He comes up, he goes, before I have the jugglers come up, I have to tell you the World Series game is tied in the bottom of the 7th. And like a good third of the crowd got up and left. And he goes, well, I had to tell him that. Afterwards, we go, why'd you? He goes, well, I had to tell him. I'm like, why did you have to tell him that? But we still got paid. It's one thing if you're getting the check, because at least you're going like, well, all right, whatever.
I mean, yeah, there's always going to be another show.
Yeah.
No matter how bad the show goes. As long as the shows aren't going bad every time. I had a show where I was at a comedy club in San Jose, The Last Laugh, and I'm about to go on. It's a brick building with a brick backdrop for like the comedy club backdrop, and there was an earthquake. Like as the MC is about to introduce me. It was not a big earthquake, but everybody felt it.
Right.
And that can put a dumper in any show, let me tell you, because everybody's looking around. It's kind of a big building, the kind that can just crumble.
Well, especially in the Bay Area or the California in general, earthquakes are not something you really take too lightly. Now, I remember when you first mentioned the bounce piano to me, and I have to admit, I was skeptical. I hope you enjoyed the first half of my interview with Dan Menendez. In the second part, we'll find out, was my skepticism warranted, or was the bounce piano a big success? I think we know the answer to that one. Big thanks to the IJA, Todd Smith Juggling, and Renegade Juggling for their support. Now, go to the IJA webpage, download part number 2 for the second half with Dan Menendez.